The Miami Heat willing to trade Jimmy Butler? We're going to be looking at the new report coming from Shams Charania, in which he details a team in the Miami Heat could be willing to move off of one of their players in Jimmy Butler. So we're going to look at all of that and more on this episode of Swish City. What's up, guys? How you guys doing? Like I said in the introduction, let's get into this. But if you want to look at this, Shams Charania came out with a brand new inside pass for ESPN today, where he detailed some big stuff, talking about Brandon Ingram Pelicans navigating a trade and the Heat opening to listening to offers for Jimmy Butler. And he had this to say on Twitter, saying that the Heat are open to listening to offers for Butler, league sources told ESPN, and the six-time All-Star is believed to prefer a win-now contender in any trade. And the Heat this season have been pretty solid. They are fifth in the Eastern Conference, even though the East has been weak, sitting over 500 at 12-10, but are a little bit lengths away from some of those top teams in the Celtics and the Cavaliers. So if they feel that with this core and with this team that they currently have constructed, they can compete, they should go for it. And with this team, we've really seen players like Tyler Hero really emerge through this Heat roster. Someone who I had written off on this Heat team and I expected to be a trade candidate has been their new igniting of their flame, as he has been that perennial guard that he has really been that mold that the Heat have been projecting for him, and he's really taken over as that lead scorer. And Bam Adebayo has had a little bit of a rocky season to start so far, but he has also looked pretty solid as well at that center position. And with the Heat having some young players like Jaime Jaquez, Nikola Jovic, drafting Kel'el Ware, it may be time to go away from the Jimmy Butler story. We know Jimmy Butler had some issues with Pat Riley through the off season. That's why he didn't show up doing some crazy media day outfit thing or anything like that. Jimmy Butler also declined to speak to media following today's, big thing blossoming out on the news. So it does seem like it could be legit. And the Heat, a team who has dealt with some injuries and with Jimmy Butler has been a main recipient of those injuries, it may be time to turn the gears and shift off the six-time All-Star and finding him a new home to help compete, while the Heat can still contend with getting some more youth movement coming in to help out with their squad for the future. And I think that for the Heat, this is a perfect direction for them to go to. Kind of going into this season, I had them obviously sticking with Jimmy and Bam and trying to trade Hero to get a third star like Zach LaVine or maybe a scorer like Trae Young to kind of come into this team. But ultimately, if this is the direction that the Heat are showing us that they're going to go, I think it is the right one from the product we have seen this season. So let's dive in and let's look at some possible trades that Jimmy Butler could find himself on some of these teams. Now, Boveda has released some of their odds, and I looked at that list and I chose 5 teams that I truly think Jimmy Butler could ultimately help, and I do think that the Heat could get a pretty solid package from in return. Now, before we dive in and before we look at all of this, like I mentioned, Jimmy Butler is the main big bucks on this Heat roster, making around 40 million, and he is under contract, but he is up for an extension next year, and in 2 years he will be free agent. So for the Heat, this could be the perfect timing as well to move off a player in Jimmy Butler, with him getting older in age, and with their team with players like Bam Adebayo, Jaime Jaquez, and Tyler Hero all being relatively around the same age. Let's dive in and let's look at some possible Jimmy Butler places to go. In the first one, you saw my recent video talking about the Warriors going and star chasing. I talked about the Warriors being out wanting to get some players to help out their push. And I think Jimmy Butler what could be a perfect one for them. He was my dark horse in that video just in case he was going to get possibly traded. And now that these rumors are coming out, I think that this could be a perfect match for both parties. The Warriors have some young talent that they would like to move off of that the Heat could take and give extensions to. Hint, hint, wink, wink, Jonathan Kuminga. And I think Kuminga alongside a player like Tyler Hero and Bam Adebayo kind of fills that Jimmy Butler role that Jimmy would be playing for this team, but just at a younger age and just helps them set up for their future even more. I think that the Heat could also maybe get a pick or two off of the Warriors in that case. And for the Warriors, adding a player like Jimmy Butler, one of the top tier defenders when healthy, alongside players like Stephen Curry, Buddy Hield, Draymond Green is only going to enlarge their playoff push and give them a better chance. And I can see the Warriors also doing another move around the edges as well to help bring in some more talent, maybe even a guy like Nikola Vucevic, to where if they were to have a player like Stephen Curry, Nikola Vucevic, and a player in Jimmy Butler, they could be true contenders. Now, I do think that both teams will engage in trade talks, and I think the Warriors will be one of the teams that are the most aggressive in getting a deal done to acquire Jimmy Butler, as he is that type of star player that could really fit in, get rid of Andrew Wiggins, get rid of Jonathan Kuminga, put in a player like Jimmy Butler, and that, I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be effective for the Warriors. And for the Heat, they still get a solid defender in Andrew Wiggins to fill in that role, and Kuminga, also a pretty grimy defender and a pretty decent scorer when he's given the opportunity to unleash. Steve Kerr hasn't given that to him. He can take that and showcase those skills in Miami alongside the younger players. Now, this next team is also interested in Jimmy Butler, and that is the Houston Rockets. And the Houston Rockets are going to be one of those teams that a lot of people are going to be talking about going in trades, them alongside the Thunder, just because they have the most talent and the most draft picks available to really shell out to get a blockbuster deal. And with the Rockets, they kind of have some players that can be stars and rise to stars, but we really haven't seen who's taken over. Jalen Green, Alperen Sengun both got those contracts and looking like Sengun's going to be that guy, but they also have young players in Tari Eason and Amen Thompson who've been fantastic on defense and in Ime Udoka's team as well that they could keep and contend. Now, obviously, if the Heat are interested in doing a deal with the Rockets, I could see the Rockets wanting to acquire a player in Jimmy Butler and the Heat wanting to get some of their young talent back. And for the Rockets, you could say there could be bigger superstars on the market like Giannis Antetokounmpo or Kevin Durant in the summer. So do we go all in and do we go and get a player like Jimmy Butler now to help us out, or do we just wait for that extra superstar? I think for the Rockets, they should personally wait, but if they were to get in on a trade in Jimmy Butler, a deal centering around Jabari Smith Jr., I think would be a perfect acquisition for the Miami Heat. I think he works perfectly alongside a player in Bam Adebayo, as Bam could then play the 4 on offense with Jabari playing the 5, and then simultaneously switching on defense. Jabari also doesn't need the ball in his hands and can stretch out the floor, so him and Bam can just basically run around, and Bam can be that interior defender for this Miami team. For the Rockets, trying to, add a player like Jimmy Butler, it would be effective, but I feel like they have players like Dylan Brooks and Tari Eason that already bring that defensive role. You're obviously just adding Jimmy Butler to add an extra punch on that defensive side and getting a guaranteed 20 to 25 points on the wing when he is out there. Now, obviously, Jimmy would be a dog fight for this Rockets team, but I think the Rockets got bigger fish to fry in the off season, and I think they might hold out on an acquisition for Jimmy Butler. All right, let's go over to the other team in Texas that's interested in Jimmy Butler, and that would be the Dallas Mavericks. Now, obviously, the Dallas Mavericks already went and made a big splash adding Klay Thompson in the last offseason, but if they could go out and take some of these role players that they have, players like PJ Washington, Maxi Kleba, and add, or even Jaden Hardy, some of their young talent, and add that in a trade to Miami, they could be able to get a player like Jimmy Butler to add to this nucleus to pair alongside Kyrie Irving, Luka Doncic, and Klay Thompson, alongside these two bigs in Daniel Gafford and Derek Lively, and it would make them a true juggernaut to compete against that Celtics squad in the Eastern Conference. The only problem with this deal is I think that the Heat will get some more interesting offers from other teams. Like I just mentioned with the two teams previous, with the Rockets and with the Warriors, I think packages surrounding Jonathan Kuminga and Jabari Smith Jr., if you're able to get either of those pieces, are more entertaining than a package surrounding Jaden Hardy, Maxi Kleba, PJ Washington. I do think that those players could be effective, and PJ Washington might be one of those better ready players if you're the Heat and want to contend. But ultimately, I think that if the Heat want to move off of Jimmy Butler, they're going to want to bring in some young talent as well that can be some future building blocks. And I think that the Dallas Mavericks don't have that as much as these other teams. But I think if Dallas were able to get him, they would be the true juggernaut. Now, Now, before we get into these next two teams, I would like to preface that both of these teams I think are long shots, but I think would be very interesting for Jimmy Butler and for the respective team if they were able to get him. Now, the first one of these teams is the Sacramento Kings, and the Kings have been a topic of discussion lately across the NBA as they have been very disappointing. Players on this team have not lived up to expectations, and they have looked terribly on the defensive side once again, which has allowed them to be absolutely bludgeoned in some of these battles where they're going back and forth. And it's led them to a lot of trade rumors as they brought in DeMar DeRozan, but have not been able to fight for a playoff spot or even a play-in spot with their new acquisition. And rumors have surrounded the name of De'Aaron Fox going to the Heat. So why not do this if you're the Kings? If you're a player in Sacramento and you can get Jimmy Butler, why not trade? I know it's a lot trading away De'Aaron Fox, but you have those guards in Malik Monk. You have some defensive pressure as well. Adding a player in Jimmy Butler to a team that desperately needs defense at the wing. He wanted to play with DeMar DeRozan over in Miami anyways. He was trying to recruit him. He'd love to go play with DeMar. He'd fit in well with Sabonis. You have a lineup of Keegan Murray, Domantas Sabonis in the front court, Jimmy Butler, Malik Monk, and DeMar DeRozan. That is a top tier lineup. Monk can play the point guard, can stretch and shoot. Jimmy obviously can play. And then you team up De'Aaron Fox with Bam Adebayo. For the Heat as well, they bring in a young point guard that can play alongside Tyler Hero. Yes, may take away some of the touches from Hero, but would allow Hero to be more of a catch and shoot, creating his own type of shot player. Maybe get some more run with the second unit as well and extending his time, kind of splitting up those minutes and who's going to be the true point guard. And then you also could maybe get some other piece as well from Sacramento in this deal. I don't necessarily know how it would work, but a deal with Jimmy Butler for De'Aaron Fox, I think could both solve each team's issues. And then lastly, a team that might not need to make moves, but would really severely benefit from making a move would be the Memphis Grizzlies. And I think they're a team that obviously has been a top of the West when healthy and can showcase that with Ja, Desmond Bane, and Jaren Jackson. But imagine adding Jimmy Butler to that lineup, an added defensive veteran who's that grit and grind Memphis mentality. Oh my God, it would do wonders. And the Grizzlies, do they have talent? Yes, they do. They have multiple guys that have come up from these two-way deals from last season. Guys like Vince Williams Jr., guys like Scottie Pippen, guys like Jay Huff this season who have done it, and another guy in Gigi Jackson. All four of those guys could be interesting pieces to dangle along contracts like Brandon Clark, who makes around $14 million, who could be a tradable deal. And if the Heat are interested in a deal with moving off of Jimmy Butler, and you're the Memphis Grizzlies, and you have some excess talent, maybe making that trigger move to go and get that superstar could just put you over the top in the Western Conference, put you over Dallas, and really put you in that conversation with Oklahoma City. I don't know. Let me know what you think down below. I think it is a little bit of a long shot, but we went over 5 teams that I think could make big impacts with Jimmy Butler. They were the Warriors, the Rockets, the Mavericks, the Grizzlies, and the Kings. All of those teams being in the Western Conference. I do think that if they were to trade Jimmy Butler, they would trade him to a Western Conference opponent so they do not have to play him. And I think a lot of these Western Conference teams that want to compete and want to be in the race over in to the Western Conference Finals would love to add a piece in Jimmy Butler. But let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section, what you ultimately feel. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Have a great rest of your day, and peace out.